I mean, what a way to end the episode, right? You literally tease us with the potential of Kyo blaming himself for Toru's mother's death. It's probably not going to be as simple as, like, he's actually responsible. Probably it's going to be some form of guilt, and even if it was something super twisted, it's not like he pulled a trigger or anything, right? He probably has some sort of guilt that he feels like he could have done something to stop what occurred. But the "I'll never forgive you" line, like, that's something that's going to be very interesting because the only way that you could get over that trauma is if the daughter of the person who supposedly said "I'll never forgive you" forgives you, right? Throwing the fact that your lover to be might have been partially responsible for the most important person up until him being a part of your life is death. I mean, it's something for sure. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not sure if it'll be the main focus of next week's episode or if it'll be weeks down the line and they'll push it off for the time being, but this episode had a lot to go off of. And it's nice to have Tohru finally admit that Kyo is without a doubt the most important thing in her life, but the guilt of, forgetting her mother and moving on is something she can't do, right? While she didn't have the courage to say in this episode after kind of getting that guilt of the mother kind of looking away as a ghost, like, it does say to me that by the end of this series, these two will be together. I still feel that way. I really, really do. I mean, I think it would be too much of a blue balls moment if, like, whatever happened in the past with Kyo and the mother actually made them not be together, because Tohru loves Kyo, Kyo loves Tohru, right? I mean, to end the series with them just both lonely and still isolated, I don't think that's a satisfying ending, but we'll see what happens, right? But there's been, I think, a lot of people who've targeted Tohru for a multitude of reasons, and I mean, even before season 1 ended, I claimed Tohru to be an incredible protagonist. I didn't need an episode like this to say as such, but it just gives me further ammo to shoot towards those naysayers, like the fact of why does she talk a certain way? Why is she always so polite? Why does she put herself down and put others first? Well, we learn exactly as such in this episode. So, her father, right? Very much she's trying to mimic how he spoke. And she did that because a bunch of adults are pieces of shit towards her because she's just a kid. She won't understand what we're saying. Kids absolutely understand what you're saying most of the time, unless you use very big terms that they haven't come to understand yet. But saying that she looks nothing like him, is she going to be enough to get the mother over this grief? So she came to the conclusion that she would start speaking like her father and almost having a different personality so her mother would be able to hopefully not run away from her so that she wouldn't leave. And even though she was hating her father in those moments because it felt like her father was taking her mother from her, she decided to be like her. And I like the kind of back and forth between having Kyo and the grandfather talk to then also having just Tohru reflect on things. And to see the whole idea that this was simply a girl who, even to this day, not only is holding on to the speaking pattern long after the mother is gone, but the fact that even the grandfather, by misnaming her, right, saying like, oh, he accidentally calls her by the mother's name. But for her, she's someone who can't let go, and it was almost like this saving grace that, similar to how when the mother lost the father, Tohru started acting like, well, obviously how this father would act. So when the mother's gone, it would be very easy for her to slip away, so by the grandfather accidentally saying her name, it was something to constantly remind her. While it's cruel in a certain sense, as even the grandfather and Kyo admit, it's also something to keep her grounded so she doesn't fly away, basically. There's so many just great moments, and the information that this brings up, it just paints an even clearer picture on Tohru as a character, why she was always so good at putting herself down, because the true Tohru was a lonely and sad person. Kyo mentions it how at one point he actually was to check in on her when the mother was gone, and she was just a lonely girl eating by herself. That was the true one, but around people she would be the fake Tohru. And I think one of the most interesting questions that get brought up was something that I'm glad they brought up. Immediately, my gut reaction was, nope, there's no way, but it was a good enough what if. Are you only connected to Kyo because you feel bad for him? And it's something that your natural reaction is like, no way in hell. But it is a good question to ask, because for most people, I mean, the one person who was kind to the previous cat, or one of the previous cats anyway, was someone who just felt pity, and in some ways it is a loving connection, but in others it's not what they want, right? So to have Kyo's true father in this situation say like, while I'm happy in a certain sense, I just worry that maybe she doesn't love Kyo for who he is, but more she feels bad. But when you think about both of them, they are two characters who very much are similar, but they do have some differences, but they kind of complete the puzzle. It's the same as Yuki with his love interest, or You know, for better or worse, even Shigure and Akito, right? They're characters who they are so similar and they have such different but similar problems that they are two lonely characters who have been kind of ostracized by the world. And the fact that they are the only two who can really see the beauty in the other, someone like Kyo doesn't look at Tohru and says, oh, you need to be happy around me, you need to be this or that, you can be sad and you can cry, it's perfectly okay. And someone like Tohru doesn't see him as an ugly beast that needs to be locked away, right? There's so many similar things. And while there definitely is still that holy shit, you know, if Kyo really does have something terrible to do with the mother's death, that is going to be painful. But it almost feels to me like something that's been built up like silently for a while, but also is just like that big final finale before they get together to have something truly explosive occur as we hopefully deal with Akito and the final banquet, right? I just simply love how this was an episode that was meant to say, if there's any naysayers about Tohru and Kyo wanting to be together, this episode says as such. But it also clears up, you know, that quote-unquote Mary Sue persona that so many people still held on to, even by the final season. She was never a Mary Sue, I said as such in season 1. Plenty of people saying, oh, it's just a generic nice personality. But I like how they actually gave her a reason for having said personality and her speaking pattern and the way she would always act around people, because for her, you know, losing everything, she needs to hold on to it and not forget. And the last stage of healing after losing someone is moving on, and for moving on, that would be with Kyo, clearly, but it will be very painful to get there. I mean, this episode was incredible for a multitude of reasons. I love Shigure, once again, one of my favorite aspects about the final season. Him just kind of throwing it in Tohru's face, like, kind of felt to me like it was him edging her on because he views Tohru as the solution, because since Tohru's kind of like intervention in all these things, the curses and bonds have started to snap, and once one snaps, it starts a chain reaction. The fact that there's never been a situation where all the Zodiacs were born at the same time, it is the final banquet, and eventually everything will break. But someone like Tohru doesn't want it to, you know, randomly happen later. She needs it to happen before Kyo will be locked away. Even though there's a lot of cruelty to what Shigure says or does, and how he very much puts things so bluntly that people can run off and cry as they are having an emotional breakdown, it says to me that he's doing that because, you know, there is a time limit. There is a lot of things, and I think a lot of people are done with waiting around. So for him to just encourage probably the one person who probably can change things, it's just a shitty way to get the job done. And that's what I think makes someone like Shigure so fascinating, is because he recognizes who he is. He doesn't hide away from the shitty things, but he also is like, someone's got to do it and I'm fine being the villain, right? And just like the numerous moments kind of building up to all the emotional struggles, like I really wasn't expecting a Tohru and Kyo power couple moment in this episode, to then even at the depression towards the end, but leave it to the final season. I mean, what was this, episode 6 of the final season? It really does feel like we're building up to the finale once again, and every single week just continues to knock it out of the park. And I'm not sure exactly what I would claim is my favorite episode of Fruits Basket overall, but if you were to go back through all 3 seasons so far, this would have to be in the top 10 episodes, no questions asked for me, maybe even the top 5. It just has so many different things happening, and from characters, you know, who gave up their love for someone like Kyo, getting mad that she still hasn't admitted her feelings towards Kyo, so she feels like she can't move on. There's just all these things that are still coming into play, and it feels like it's a perfectly laid out road that doesn't have any cracks or bumps along the way. We're just keep making it as we go, and by the time the show wraps up, we'll finally reach that grand finale, that grand destination. And we're not going to look back and say, yeah, they missed this mark. No, everyone's getting their chance to shine, and it feels great to feel that way. As always, let me know your thoughts and feelings on this episode, and where do you think that cliffhanger is going to take us in the following episodes? If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.